So I'm back for another recipe today, and what we have here is an eye of the round. It's a full eye of the round, and we are going to make something that I absolutely love, which are roast beef sandwiches. And this is what I'm going to use for the roast beef sandwich. This is about 5 pounds of. We're not going to use all this, but this is about 5 pounds. I'll show you in a second what I'm going to do with this here. I have a hard time not having a choice of what I want to do as far as going to the deli to get a pound of roast beef. So I've been doing this for a long time now. I make my own roast beef. A lot of people do it, but I will show you how I do it. So this is about 5 pounds, like I said. So what we're going to do is we're just going to clean this up a little bit. You can see it's got a fat cap on it here. So we are going to take care of some of this fat. I don't like a lot of fat on this piece of meat, but we're only going to use a portion of this. But we are going to just get in here and cut some of this fat off. This is good if you have a really sharp knife. This works real good. Other than that, you may struggle a little bit with it. Now you can leave a little bit of this fat on if you like to, but when I cut my roast beef, I like it like really lean. So I kind of get right down to, the meat. I don't really leave too much on it. You'll see when it's done. I do the same thing when I cut up a tenderloin as well. If I buy a whole tenderloin, a beef tenderloin, in one shot, I'll take it home and I'll butcher that and just so it's the way I want it, basically. Because after all, you're the one eating it, right? So this is what we do. We'll just and then you can just get into the fat layer. You can feel it between the meat and the fat layer. And if you just stick your knife under it like that, and then just kind of pull, and you can see it. It's a little bit easier, maybe cutting from one side to the next. Then once you get it going, you can always just trim this up like this. Real simple. And this is what I do with this. I know this is all over the counter here. I should have a wet cloth underneath my cutting board, but I do not. There's a tip for you. If your cutting board is moving around, like mine is, you can put a wet towel underneath it, and that'll stop that from moving around. Okay, so we just got a little bit more here to do. Doesn't look too bad. Remember that this also is a very as a whole, this is a pretty tough piece of meat to deal with. So it's it's like a top round roast, a bottom round roast, and you can use top round, bottom round. You can do whatever you want. I just happened to get this particular cut of meat at the store today. And I know some people will say, "Oh, you're just butchering the hell out of the piece of meat." Well, everybody does it the way they want to do it. But see, all this, I don't like any of it, so it's got to go just like that. Okay, so this is coming along pretty good. A little bit more, not much. Okay, so you can see now that this is all pretty much where I want it to be. Another minute or so, a little bit more cleaning, just like this. Okay. Okay, so not too bad.
Take a look at all these double clock cards here. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, I see. All of them have their highlights on. Steve says they do need cans out front. Well, there's more stuff.
All right, so this looks pretty good. I got most of the fat off it. It looks pretty lean now, which is where I want it. A little bit of tiny fat doesn't mean that's not going to hurt much. So you do have this other piece right here where this vein is right here. That I do take this off as well. You just cut right down into the middle right there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but just cut this right down. Okay, just like that. So we have this off as well. All right, so we're just going to set that aside. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this up a little bit. I'm only looking for like a 3-pound piece of beef. So you see how it kind of tapers down on this side. So if we cooked it like this, same thing with this tail over here is real, it just comes to a point. So the middle is going to cook a lot different than the ends will. So I always just go right from the end. I take this little piece off here. So that's what we're going to do. And you say, obviously you're saving this. You're doing something with it, whatever you choose to do about it. So, and then just flip it around. And I make this as big as I can get it, so it's completely the same width. So you could see somewhere in here it starts to roll down on you. So from here to here actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to cut it right about here, and then this is going to give me my roast. So that's the roast. Okay, so this now we're going to season, and I'll be right back in a second to show you the seasoning. I'm going to get washed up, cleaned up a little bit, and we'll mix the seasoning and we'll get this going. But you can see this side is just about as thick as this side, and that's going to cook nice and even all the way through. Okay, so we have our roast all cut down, cleaned up, proportioned the way I want it. This is probably about 3 pounds, 3¼ pounds. So what we do now is I just got to mix my spices. Over here we got 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1 teaspoon of rosemary, 1 teaspoon of thyme, 3/4 of a teaspoon of fresh cracked pepper. We have a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, and some olive oil. So all I'm going to do is put each one of these. Okay, so here's your mixture. You can mix this with your finger if you want to, that's fine. Just get it all incorporated. Or you can use a bigger bowl, and you can whisk it if you want to, but just so it's all kind of incorporated. So we're going to be super generous with this. That's just how I like it. But before we do the seasoning, we're just going to add a little bit of olive oil to it. Not too much. You don't want to get it soaking wet. You don't want to get it crappy or whatever, and you're just gonna turn around and coat the whole roast with olive oil. Okay, even the ends, make sure you get the ends. Okay, so that's done. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna wipe my hands real quick, and we're gonna start adding our seasoning. You be real liberal with this if you want to. Put it on, rub it in, make sure you get all of it. Just make sure it's all coated. So that seasoning is good for, like I said, it's about 3 pounds, 3¼ pounds. Just, you know, listen, cooking and this type of thing, it isn't really rocket science. You just have to, if you know what you like, then that's how you make it. That's my rule of thumb. And this is how I like my roast beef. So, okay, so we pretty much got this all set. All right, so now you can see if you got any extra on the board or on your cutting table, you can always just kind of do this. So you can see now that this is all beautifully coated. So now this is going to go into, this is going to hit the oven at this point. It's going to go uncovered on a baking rack for about an hour. It all depends, and that's how you're going to cook it, just like this. You're going to push it in the oven just like this. So I'll be back. We'll put this in the oven. We'll get a thermometer in it. This now goes in the oven, and we will let this cook for approximately an hour, and I will see that in an hour. Okay, so our roast is done. It hit 129, so we're gonna just silence this and shut that off, and we are gonna go in and get this absolutely going to be delicious piece of meat. So now we're going to let this sit, and we're going to let this cool for a while, and then we're going to put it in the refrigerator overnight and take it out tomorrow. We're going to slice this up, and we'll show you what goes on from there. Alright, so we are on to the next step. We have my roast beef that I put in the refrigerator overnight, and now it's time to slice this up. So this is what it looks like after it sits and it cools. So this I cook to medium rare. It's just how I like it. It's I cooked it to about 129. It got to be, after sitting, it got to be about 135, 136, and then the temperature started dropping again, which is where you want it to be. So instead of cutting it straight down like this, I always cut my roast beef just at a slight angle. So instead of cutting it like this, you cut it like this, and I'll show you why I do that. So we're just going to cut this in half, roughly in half, I guess. And this is what the inside of this looks like, which is absolutely perfect. If you don't like it this rare, it's not that rare, but if you don't like it this rare, you cook it a little bit more. But you could see around the edges, it's almost pink all the way around the perimeter of this, which is kind of where you want to be with this. Now, I did turn this 30 minutes Actually, I turned it when the temperature of this roast hit 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And the reason why I did that is because it had to go X amount of degrees, and I took the degrees, whatever it was, and cut it in half, and then I wound up turning the pan that it was in. This way, if your oven is hot on one side won't get hit with the heat. You turn it around and it cooks pretty. So anyways, that's what it was. This is what happens when you cook it to 129 and let it rest. So the reason why I let it rest is because, and I put it in the refrigerator, is because it's very easy to slice the next day. So the reason why I cut it at an angle like this is because when you start cutting this, you're not cutting it and shaving the meat straight down. You're kind of cutting it at an angle. So this one's already at your angle, and then when you do this piece, you're just going to flip it this way, and then you can start cutting your other piece. So that's the reason why I do that. So we're just going to remove this piece for right now, and I'm going to get going on cutting this piece. So this is all I do. Very sharp knife. I highly recommend that. This way you can get some really, really good pieces. And this does take a little bit of time. I do like it. Not quite shaved, but, you know, in slices, but thin, you know. And this is how I do it because it tastes great on a sandwich. And after all, that's the reason why I'm building this is for sandwiches. And this this looks fantastic. And if you wanted a little bit more done, if you're not a big fan of rare meat, then cook this to, I don't know, you could probably pull it out of the oven at like maybe 132, 133. That'd probably be good as well. Almost done with the second piece, and I'll weigh it out, see what I got. And I'm not sure if I said it in the beginning before I put this in the oven, but this went in the oven for an hour and a half on 320, turning at one time when it hit 80 degrees on the thermometer. So it's about an hour and a half to roast this. I do it slow, but this is the result that you get, which is wonderful. Okay, so out of that roast beef, this is what we wound up coming up with. All right, so I decided to make a dressing for this as well. This is a standard recipe that I use for roast beef, like I'm doing for this particular case. I use it when I make gyros. I put this over chicken in a wrap. This is my go-to recipe. So what we have is we have a 1/4 cup of mayo. We have 1 tablespoon of milk. We have 1 tablespoon of cider vinegar. Then we go on to our dry ingredients. We got a 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, a 1/2 teaspoon of basil. We just have a pinch of rosemary. It's like 1/8 teaspoon. So there's not much. It's just a pinch of rosemary. And then we move on to the 1/4 teaspoon of sugar, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic salt, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of fresh cracked pepper. And I have a little bit of milk here reserved in case I want to thin it out. Depends on how you like your dressing. You like a little on the thicker side, then when I get done with this, I'll show you guys what it looks like. If you like it a little bit more thinner, add a little bit more milk, we'll thin it out. Remember, this has to go in the refrigerator for a minimum of 2 hours. It works the best if you leave it overnight. 4 to 6 hours, you're good. You just want to let all these ingredients come together. So let's start with this, and we'll put the mayo in. And we'll dump the milk in. We'll dump the cider vinegar in. We'll dump the oregano, the basil, the pinch of rosemary, our sugar, our garlic powder, our garlic salt, and our fresh cracked pepper. And this is what it's going to look like before you, I don't know how much you can actually see of this. The lighting is terrible in this kitchen. So we just whisk. Okay, so I think that looks really good, and we're just going to leave it just as that. So this is what it looks like. We're going to put saran wrap over this. We're going to put this in the refrigerator, and we're going to let it sit for a minimum of 2 hours. Probably let it go 4 hours, and then we'll take it out. The longer the better on this. So we'll keep going forward with this recipe. So that's the dressing for our classic roast beef sandwich. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to a recipe for potato wedges, potato spuds, big, thick, very thick baked potatoes, wedges. So this is really simple. This is like a half hour, maybe 5 minutes to put it together. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with 2 russet potatoes. I do leave the skins on. Because it's good when it bakes, they crisp up pretty good. So I have 2 russet potatoes, and we're going to get this recipe started. So we're just going to put one over here. We're going to start, and we're going to cut 1 potato in half, just like that, and then we're going to cut it again, just like that. And then we're going to cut it again in another wedge. So you wind up with something like this. Now this happens to be a pretty big potato. I didn't think that it was this big, but we're going to go with it anyways. But this is a great little side dish. Try to get them all the same size if you can, because we're putting these in the oven and we're baking these. So that's what I'm going to do with these. So I will cut up the other one as well. So again, you're going straight down the middle, and you're going straight down the middle again, and then you're going to cut this each piece into a wedge. Because like this is better than like you know, potato chips or, you know, regular French fries, frozen French fries. It's a little bit better than that. So up our game a little bit. Okay, so we have all of these wedges that are going to go into the oven, but before we do that, I'm going to place them in a bowl, just like this. Okay, and we're going to add a little bit of olive oil to it. Not too much, you don't want to get them soaking wet, but we're going to add just a little bit just to coat everything. And you can mix these around with your hands if you want to, and you'll see, you know, you'll see when everything's coated, everything will be shiny. Okay, so once they're all coated with the olive oil, you know, your potato's going to look kind of like that, kind of shiny. Okay, so these are garlic Parmesan potato wedges. Okay, so we have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, so we're just going to throw that right in. We have 1 teaspoon of dried parsley. We'll throw that in as well. And we have a half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And this is just because I like a little bit of heat. You can leave this out if you want to. It's not that much, but it'll probably just add a little bit of sting, which I love. So then we're just going to go on to, we're going to do a pinch of salt. Salt them up a little bit. And then we're going to do some fresh cracked pepper. About like that, maybe about a half a teaspoon, somewhere around there. And now we're gonna just mix these up. Sometimes they jump out of the bowl at you, huh? All right, so it doesn't take much to get them all coated. We're just trying to get an even coat on them and not too much of one thing on each potato. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to clean my hand real quick. Okay, and then I think the best part is we're going to add some Parmesan Reggiano to these. So you're just going to grate some, I don't know, it really all depends on how much you like. You can do, I don't know, 1/4 of a cup. You know, whatever you, like I said, whatever you like. This is pretty versatile. Nothing is carved in stone on this recipe. Okay, so the Parmesan cheese is in, and once again, we're just going to flip these around, coat them so they're all evenly coated. Okay. So this is what they look like. Okay, so the next step is I have an oven that's preheated already to 400 degrees. I have a cast iron skillet. A lot of people, what they do is they put these on a baking sheet, which you can just as well do that. But I'll put them in a cast iron skillet today. I've done them both ways, but today seems to be a cast iron skillet day. Get them in there, you know, good and tight, I guess. They don't need too much room to breathe because they're all going to cook no matter what. You don't want to pile them on top of each other, but you can, okay. So that looks about good. And then these are going to go in the oven for about 30 minutes on 400 degrees. So into the oven these go. Now we put these potatoes in the oven. And we're going to bake these for about 30 minutes. So we're gonna go in and get these, and these look absolutely fantastic. So I kept these in for about an hour because they were a little bit bigger than I anticipated them to be, but this is what they're going to look like when they're done. They're nice and crispy. They're really like a mashed potato on the inside. So this is what it is. So we're going to plate some stuff up here for lunch. So we are ready to finally assemble this. I know this video is probably going to be a little bit long, but that's what it is right now. So we have 2 pieces of sourdough bread that I got from a local bakery. And we're going to take some of the dressing that I made earlier, and we're going to put some on each piece. This is going to be so good. I promise you it's going to be so good. Okay, so I'm going to start off with 2 pieces of Swiss cheese. It's going to be a roast beef and Swiss cheese. So that's what we're going to do. I had to get my mopping, so got to keep my hands clean. Okay, so we got the cheese down. We're going to put a small bed of lettuce down next. We're going to put 2 slices of tomato down after that. And we're going to put a few red onion. You know, this is one of those recipes, you know, I mean, it's a sandwich, right? We're not getting crazy with it, but you know, you put as much as you like. So I think that's good enough for me. So we got the cheese, lettuce, tomato, onion, and now we're gonna, and I've tasted this roast beef, and now we're gonna turn around and we're gonna put this roast beef on this sandwich that we made a little while ago. This is gonna be such a good sandwich. So this is, and make sure you get, like, you know, when you go out to a diner or whatever, you know, they mound it like directly in the middle, right? And then when that happens, you know, then what happens, right? Then you got nothing on the edge. So make sure you get your roast beef all around, even on the edges. You don't want to bite into just bread. At least I don't want to bite into bread. That kind of irritates me. So, okay. So there's the sandwich. We're going to take a little bit more of this dressing now, and we're just going to drizzle it on the top of the sandwich. It's like you can never get enough of this dressing. This dressing is fantastic. Okay, so that's how I do, and there's enough seasoning in this between seasoning the roast beef and seasoning this dressing. You don't need extra seasoning. I mean, again, you can if you want. You want to put salt and pepper on it, be more than happy to put some salt and pepper on it. All right, so this is how I do a roast beef sandwich. So we're going to plate this. Okay. And then we're going to take some of those amazing, and I know you guys probably think I'm kidding, but absolutely amazing fries that I made from earlier. And we're just going to put a few of these just like this. I think 6 is a good serving size, yeah? Just like that. Okay. All right, the only thing we got to do left now is we just got to give this a little bit more cheese for some garnish. And we're gonna top it off with a few green onion, just like that. Nothing too crazy. And we're gonna give it a small bowl of, we're gonna give this a small bowl of chipotle sauce to dip in the fries, or steak fry, whatever you want to call them, right? It's pretty versatile here. So this is how I make my roast beef sandwich with big, huge French fries. This is how I do it. So if you guys make this, let me know how you like it. Put a thumbs up. If I post it to my YouTube channel, great, or wherever else I may post it. But just remember one thing: if you want it done right, cook it yourself.